5 months, according to the ProPublica article, to make a decision on that. So this is there. The one unit, Netza Yehuda, is, according to the Israeli military, still operating and operating in Gaza sometimes. There's not much of a sign of urgency from the State Department that there are these Israeli units accused of gross human rights violations, extrajudicial killings, torture, rape, and the death of the U.S. citizen. Yes, Ellen. Getting there. There doesn't seem to be that there needs to be any urgency to protect the Palestinian civilians who are being exposed to these gross human rights violations, including with a postponed decision on Netza Yehuda.
So to take a step back, I take it you are referring to some of the things that were publicly reported at the tail end of last week in reference to some correspondence that the Secretary had with congressional leadership. Is that what you're referring to? Okay. So I think it's important that we take a little bit of a step back here. First, when it comes to the Leahy Law, we have a careful and very deliberate process when it comes to implementing the Leahy Law. And I want to reiterate what you've heard me, the Secretary, Matt, and others say before, which is that the same standards when it comes to the the same standards of the application of this law applies to every country that receives U.S. security assistance. What I can say in terms of where the process is right now is that after a careful process, we found 5 Israeli units responsible for individual incidents of gross violations of human rights. All of these were incidents much before October 7th, and none took place in Gaza. 4 of these units have effectively remediated these violations, which is what we expect partners to do. It is consistent with what we expect all countries whom we have a security relationship with. For a remaining unit, we continue to be in consultations and engagements with the government of Israel. They have submitted additional information as it pertains to that unit, and we're continuing to have those conversations, consistent with the memorandum of understanding that we have with the government of Israel that was entered into in 2021. When conclusions are made under actions that fall under the auspices of the Foreign Assistance Act, we are required to consult with officials from the government of Israel, and that is ongoing. We are engaging with them in a process, and we will make an ultimate decision when it comes to that unit when that process is complete. I would also just want to note that the remediation standard is consistent, and it is the same for all countries. And what we ask of host governments in that situation is effective steps being taken consistent within their processes and systems to bring respective parties to justice. So as it relates to the process here, that's all the update that I have for now, but we're going to continue to engage with the government on that, and we will have more to share, I'm sure, at some point in the future.
There doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency in the meantime. The concern for Palestinian civilians exposed to these units doesn't factor into the timeline.
Let me just, I would 100% dispute the premise of that question. This is a deliberate process. It is a detail-oriented process. It is a rigorous process. It is easy to sometimes want things to happen as quickly as possible, but it is more important to ensure that these processes are happening in the most robust and rigorous way possible, because we are ultimately dealing with facts, and we want to make sure that we can follow the facts and make sure that we are appropriately engaging with appropriate stakeholders, including in this case the government of Israel. There is a clear process on this that we intend to follow, and that is the same process for determining these things, the standards of which are consistent with all countries. Go ahead, Kylie.
I just want to follow up on what you've been saying about the standard, being a typical process that you follow and remediation, being standard across the board. So what is the remediation standard here? How long are
So
you
that's the point that I was making, is that the standard of remediation is that these respective countries take effective steps to hold the accountable party to justice. And that is different on a country-by-country basis. I'm not going to be prescriptive of that on here, including in this incident. But it is...
I'm sorry, but then it's not a standard if you're saying it's different on a country-by-country basis.
It's a standard in the sense that we expect to see remediation in, but each country in which we have a security relationship is different. There are different protocols and procedures in place in those respective countries. And those respective countries can speak to what accountability measures they have within their systems. I'm not a spokesperson for those components.
So you won't speak to what the process you're expecting to play out here is, how long you're giving
Correct.
Israel for remediation
Absolutely.
on this unit.
I'm not going to get into that beyond saying that we are engaging with the government of Israel on these things, and I'm sure we'll have more to share in the time ahead.
And then the secretary said 10 days ago that a determination on the Leahy front with Israel had been made and that we would see results. So I'm wondering if the determination that he made 10 days ago is this determination that you guys are now making public, or if that changed due to engagements with Israelis.
What we were talking about was the gross violations of human rights. As it relates to this one particular unit, I will say that this process continues to be ongoing, given this additional information that we're engaging with the government of Israel, consistent with the memorandum of understanding that we have with them. Simon, go
Okay,
ahead. I'll get to you. I'm sure.
So no answer as to if it's changed.
What? Sorry.
The
What?
determination 10 days ago. Is this, you
What-
won't say if it's the same determination.
What
that
we
was
were
revised
speaking
by-
about was the gross violations of human rights. That's what the secretary was alluding to. I will say that this process, though, with the government of Israel broadly, continues to be ongoing, especially as it relates to this one unit.
Okay.
Just to clarify
Yeah.
where we are, because this is a bit complicated. The US government has concluded that 5 different Israeli units committed gross human rights violations, but as of now, all of those units can still continue to receive US arms, weapons, ammunition.
Well, in 4 of those instances, as I just said, we have seen remediation of those violations, and that is, of course, what we expect of partners. Beyond that, as it relates to this 5th unit, that is a process that is still ongoing.
Right.
But let me just say, Simon, since you gave me the opportunity, when we're talking about the Leahy law, what we are talking about are unit and component restrictions when they are found in violation. It is not have bearing on the broader security relationship that we may have with a country, especially a country like Israel, in which we have a longstanding security relationship, the provision of bulk assistance that's gone back many, many years.
But as of now, even the 5th unit, where you're unsure whether there's been remediation, they are still eligible to receive U.S. arms.
That is the interpretation of the law.
Yeah,
Correct.
and to sort of, I wonder, the public might listen to you say that you've concluded that there are gross violations of human rights, but is there any detail you can give us? What are these incidents? What kind of things are we talking about? Some of the reporting has involved, sexual assaults, the murder. Is there anything you can tell us about what this conclusion is?
So I'm not going to get into the specifics of these incidents from up here, because overall the totality of this situation continues to be an ongoing process, but I have no doubt that we will have more to share in the time ahead, and that is consistent with the appropriate congressional pieces as well as the engagements with the host government on this.
And you're not going to tell us what the units are in question.
Again, that is not something that we generally make public beyond through appropriate consultations with legislative bodies as well as the host government.
So the U.S. government has conducted a process, found that these units have conducted gross violations of human rights. That sounds very serious, but you won't tell us what those violations were, who committed them, and you're going to continue to send weapons to them.
That is a process that is consistent with the standards that we have with other countries as well. You have to remember, Israel is a country in which we have a long-standing security relationship with. Other countries similar in this grouping, I would say, It would include the government in terms of the kinds of relationship we have, include Ukraine, include Egypt. And in those kinds of countries, there is a proactive vetting of the whole security universe, a constant evaluation in close consultations with our embassies and consulates, NGOs, civil society, media reporting on the ground as to assess what is happening in those countries. And so, consistent with that process, I'm not in a place to share publicly the specific components of their security services in which this is applicable to. Sorry, hold on. Is this on this or on the? Okay, let me get to Olivia. Then I'll come to you, Leon. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Can you talk about within what time frame this new information from the Israeli government reached the State Department?
I'm just not going to speak to that specificity on diplomatic engagements. What I can say is that they provided additional information to us, and that is a process that's going to continue to be ongoing.
But was that additional information supplied after the Secretary made his revealed that some determinations had been made?
I'm just not going to get into the diplomatic engagements that we have. What I can say is that this is consistent with the memorandum of understanding in which we have with Israel to talk about these things prior to any conclusions that are made under things that fall under the Foreign Assistance Act.
Generally speaking, are governments under Leahy that we have relationships with bound by a certain amount of time
They are
within which
not.
they need to provide evidence or sort of confirm that they have taken steps?
They are not.
accountability
They
so
are
this
not.
is a completely open-ended
Correct.
process, and violations can stretch on for an indeterminate amount of time. And at what point then does the department actually take any punitive measures?
Well, again, you have to. It's important to remember, Olivia, that each country is different, so it's difficult to talk about these circumstances with a broad brush stroke. What I can say is that there is not a stipulation on timing, but we'll continue to have these engagements, and we will press directly with governments and countries about sharing applicable information. Again, in the context of Israel, this is a government in which we have a long-standing security relationship with. There is constant, around-the-clock evaluation and vetting ongoing as it relates to the security parameters and circumstances on the ground. So we are looking at reports. We are looking at public reporting. We're looking at media reporting, just as we would do in any conflict zone, ensuring that there are no violations of international law, no violations of humanitarian law.
But that seems to be at the core of the problem here, is that Israel is a unique country being offered unique treatment.
They
in
are
this
not being offered
circumstance.
unique treatment. There is nothing that I have outlined here that is inconsistent with the Leahy process. That is when it comes to the countries that which we have security
You've
relationships
cited the
with.
long-standing security relationship and how it might
Because
have an
there are
impact here.
some countries in which the relationship we have with them would require us to approach this just slightly differently. Ukraine being an example, Egypt being an example, Israel being another example. But there is not a special treatment. There is not a different standard.
So what does
to-
slightly differently mean?
So Israel is a country that in which we have a long-standing security relationship. There is a lot of bulk assistance that is going, whether to use an example, things like bulletproof vests or something, in which the government of Israel may choose to want something like that, and then it is then on the central government to disseminate that to specific units or components within their security system. So for countries in which we have that kind of long-standing deep relationship, in Israel's case, it's called the Israel Leahy Vetting Forum, there is around-the-clock, proactive, constant vetting and evaluation of the circumstances that are on the ground to assess whether there are whether there are violations of international humanitarian law, violations of international law. That is a process that is ongoing. There is no such thing as special treatment or double standards here. The standards of the Leahy law are applied consistently to all countries. Now, in some countries, like the ones that I stipulated, the security relationship is such as that there is this additional forum vehicle, but that is not a double standard or any kind of special treatment.
I want to defer to my colleagues, it just seems hard to countenance there's no double standard with this is a special arrangement and set of circumstances.
It's not
that
a
Israel
special
endorsed.
arrangement. The standards of which are in fact, it is taking a closer look at the situations on the ground. It's not a double standard. The standards are the same. It is a forum created to allow for the for an assessment that is comparable to the kind of security relationship that we have with that particular country. Israel is not the only one in which this model exists.
My last question on this is that does the State Department believe that actually taking punitive measures under Leahy in this instance with regard to this one unit would somehow damage diplomatic relations with Israel?
I'm not going to get ahead of that process, Olivia, and we would certainly hope not, because throughout this whole process, we have been clear-eyed and consistent. You've heard the Secretary, you've heard the President, you've heard me, you've heard Matt, that throughout the course of this conflict, we have reiterated our unwavering commitment to Israel's security. That was true then, it is true now. And Leahy is unit specific. It is not a bearing on the broader security relationship that we have with that particular country. I will also note that this continues to be an ongoing process, and if at any point remediation efforts or things like that are found to be inconsistent with the standards that we find, there of course will be a restriction on applicable U.S. assistance. We intend to be an administration that's going to follow the law as prescribed. Tom. Oh, sorry. Let me go to Leon because he's had his hand up. Then I'll come to you. Said, of course you're going to get a question. Has there ever been a briefing where you've not gotten a question on this issue? Leon.
Thank you. We agree that all this is pre-October 7 and involves the West Bank, abuses in the West Bank, okay? So quite a while ago. I don't know exactly how long, depending on which of the units you're talking about, but I find it a little bit strange that in 4 of those units, they have remediary, corrections that they did, and you accept that, evidently. And in this 5th unit, what sort of additional information could have come through all of a sudden in the last couple of weeks that would make it that you are not able to make the determination yet? And then second question, what kind of remediary decisions are we talking about? Disciplinary? What kind of corrections? Can you speak to that?
So on the second point, that's up to the host government. The standard that we expect is that they bring the relevant parties to justice. We cannot have some kind of prescriptive metric, given that each country is different and their procedures as it relates to their own government systems and military systems are different. But our standard for remediation, we expect that of all countries in this case. But beyond that, Leon, it is an ongoing process, so I'm not going to get more prescriptive or specific on the relevant details. Tom, go ahead.
I'll just follow up on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I mean, I'm confused. Do you know whether or not the Israelis have remediated this unit?
That is essentially what we are engaging with them on as it relates to this. Again, I can say that in these 5 individual incidents of gross violations of human rights, or for 4 of these units, they have effectively remediated those violations, which is, again, something we expect and want from the countries that which we have security relationships with. It's what we expect of our partners. As it relates to this remaining unit, the government of Israel has submitted additional information. We are currently reviewing it, which is consistent with the memorandum of understanding we have with them. We're engaging with them in a process, and we'll make a decision from there when that process is complete.
Okay, but the answer is you don't know. You don't know if they've remediated this unit on these cases, and we don't know what the cases are because you're not
When
saying.
I say something is mid-process, it's safe to assume
Yeah, but
that,
the law is really clear. So the law says no assistance shall be furnished to any unit of the security forces of a foreign country if the Secretary of State has credible information that such unit has committed a gross violation of human rights. So you've made that determination that they have committed a gross violation of human rights. The exception is that prohibition shall not apply if the Secretary determines and reports to the appropriate congressional committees that the government of such country is taking effective steps to bring responsible members of security forces to justice. So has the Secretary notified Congress that they are taking effective steps?
So I'm not
No, because you
legal or
don't
technical
know,
expert.
and you've just said you don't know if they've remediated. So,
I'm happy to check on the specifics of the legal process for
but
you,
that
Tom,
is the
and
legal
get back
process.
to
So
you.
according to the legal process, you've determined that they have carried out gross violations of human rights, but you haven't determined they've remediated. And yet the Secretary said on April the 19th you had made the determinations. So I'm just really confused about what changed after April the 19th.
As I was pretty clear, what I shared was that the government of Israel has shared additional information with us, and
But that, according to the law, that is not an effective remediation. So at the moment, you have a situation where you have determined there is a gross violation, but you don't have remediation. And I can't see any part of the law which says you might decide over a couple of days that it's been remediated and therefore keep the security assistance going.
So, like I said, this is an ongoing process. I'm not going to speak to it more specifically, but consistent with the memorandum of understanding that we have with the government of Israel, we are engaging with them, consulting with them as it relates to not just this broader process, but additional information that they've shared, and we'll have more to share in the time ahead. Saeed, go ahead.
Thank you, Bidan. By the way, can you share with us the outcome of the investigation of the death of Omar Asad that actually died while in custody with this unit, Nitzay Ouda? Do we know what was the outcome of that investigation?
I don't have any specifics.
Could you
I'm
look
happy
into
to
it?
check
Yeah,
for you.
please,
Saeed.
thank you.
Yeah.
The other thing is, it seems that Israel has rebuked the United States call, or your call the other day, for investigating the mass grave, the mass burial, and all these things. Do you have any comment on that?
So, Saeed, there's been some, and if you'll allow me a quick second, I don't have, make sure it's the right thing here. As it relates to this site, the IDF has been pretty public in that in its search for Israeli hostages, they uncovered graves in the area where Palestinians had previously buried their dead. There has been some pretty consistent public reporting dating back to January that is an area that Palestinians had to bury some bodies, but the IDF can speak more specifically about that process. But you heard me speak to this, you heard the National Security Advisor say, and consistently across this administration, I'd say that the facts matter, and of course, if there is any kind of inconsistency, that needs to be looked into. But I believe that the IDF has spoken publicly about what this is and what this isn't.
Okay, so you accept their answer. I mean, their answer was, we did not do that, we don't do this. I mean, that was, and they consider the matter to be over. Do you consider the matter to be over?
Saeed, I just said if there are in fact any inconsistencies, then that should be looked into. But based on even just the public reporting, the IDF has been clear about what this is and what this isn't. That being said, we engage with the government of Israel and the IDF around the clock. This is something we'll continue to discuss with them if we need to raise any further issues.
Okay.